All right, guys, let's get this party started with the words. Yeah. Hi, everybody. This is the Ask the Sensei, the Bio Dojo's free monthly Q&A webinar. I am Tish Hicks. I'm the Master Sensei of Bio Dojo here in Burbank, California. We're joined, as we are each month, with our techno sensei, Dan Lenard, in the beautiful Sherman Oaks. And each month we invite one of our esteemed colleagues, voiceover colleagues, from different genres, different aspects of the business. And we are so happy to have award-winning audiobook narrator and educator Ronnie Butler here with us. It's
a pleasure to be here.
He has we can talk about the Audi nominations.
We can.
This just in, so that's good. So let's see. I'll be telling you about what the dojo is. You'll be experiencing what the dojo is from this experience. But Dan, would you like to introduce yourself and a little bit about you?
Sure. I'm Dan Lenard, the home studio master. My job is to teach you folks how to set up a home voiceover studio, and that doesn't mean guitars hanging on the wall and big glass windows. It means learning how to properly set up your acoustics, use your microphone, and set levels.
Excellent.
How's that for the abbreviated version?
There it goes. Chop, chop, get her done. But that's what Dan's about. So, yeah. And Ronnie, do you want to introduce yourself? Oh, actually, yes, introduce yourself, and then I'll let people know how we're going to be taking questions. So,
okay.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Ronnie Butler. Professionally, it's Ron Butler, but no one calls me Ron. Everyone calls me Ronnie. But if you look for me on Audible or on AudioFile, it'll be listed on Ron Butler. I was for the last 25 years, I've been mostly a film and TV actor, and about 5 years ago started doing audiobooks and completely fell in love with it, and it has become my mainstay. And I work with all the major publishers and all the major producers, and I've recently started working with the dojo and sharing the wealth, because there's a lot of opportunity, and it's the fastest growing portion of the voiceover industry. So, and there's plenty of work to be had.
Yeah. Excellent. We're so glad you're here. And
I'm glad too.
And we'll be talking a little bit about this at the end of the call too, but Ronnie is teaching you should do voiceover, or you should do voiceover. You should do audiobooks workshop this weekend. So let us know if you're interested in that. We'll be talking about it a little bit more. Okay, so let's get this party started. So if you're just coming on, you should see a poll, and if you can fill in the poll where you are at in your journey, this helps us gauge where people are and how to aim our or calibrate our answers. If you haven't already, in the lower menu bar, there's a chat that looks like a cartoon bubble with an ellipses in it, and you can put in where you're calling from there. And then, most importantly, this is a question and answer call. So there is a button on the menu that says Q&A and has a Q and a little rectangle there. And that's where we'll be taking our questions from. Paulo, I see you put one in the chat, so I'm going to just take that from there. But if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A, and we will be taking them there. Well, let's start with Paulo's question. Paulo's in Long Island, and actually, guys, if you can put it in the question and answer, not in the chat, that would be great. Dave, I'll grab yours, but if everyone can put theirs in the question and answer. Awesome. Let's see. So Paulo asks, Do you have a mission statement for your VO business or life? If so, do you mind sharing it with us? Thank you. That's an awesome question. And just the people to talk to about that, right, Ronnie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to know what Dan's is too, actually.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity.
You go first, Hugo.
I feel that mine is for my I'm going to be narrow with it and talk about the voiceover audiobook portion of it. But mine is to give authentic voice to the heart. I think that is my mission. I think that's also my brand.
That's
yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. Do you articulate things like this, Dan?
I sort of like follow the Bob Sauer school of corporate management, which is love your clients, which means a lot of things, especially if you're in a relationship.
Draw the line.
yeah. I mean, there are certain lines there, but it's take care of the people who are using your services. Because my business is like whack-a-mole. Because it's voiceover, it's home studios, podcasting, directing. There's a lot of different things I do, and I just have to bring, me into it, and I just I like everybody if they're likable. So,
yeah.
Not that I have an attitude about it. No.
Yeah, and for the VO Dojo, our mission statement here is aligning people with the power and possibility of their voice. That's what we're about here. So yeah, that's a great question, and it's really important to articulate what that is that you're after and why you're doing stuff. So that's a fantastic question, and I want to thank you, Paula, for that question that works generally. So Ronnie's here, and we're all able to talk about audiobook stuff, but you can ask us questions. Dan's here to field all the tech questions in depth, and so you can ask questions about anything about voiceover, and Ronnie's here also with the special focus on bringing his expertise on audiobooks. So but he was tragically killed. So here's another question from Dave. How to find contacts for audiobook submissions? Do you like Ahab?
Okay. Oh, I thought I saw another question before Dave's, but.
Oh, I was going there. Okay. Well, let's answer that one quick, and then. Yeah. Oh, here he is. Oh, I see. He put it there. We got it. We got it. Okay, so let's answer the question since it's in the air.
Yeah, the one about how do you find places to submit samples and demos to? Yeah. So there's a couple of different sources. The most direct source would be the Audiobook Publishers Association, which unfortunately you have to join in order to have access. That is an organization that is, it's all the audiobook publishers, and they have a database of contacts for who at which company, their emails, and their specs on what they want to get. If they want to get a link to a web page, if they want to get an attachment with 3 different MP4 files, if they just want one, all that information is in a database that they have. If you happen to be a member of SAG-AFTRA, there is an audiobook sort of subgroup and an appointed person within SAG that deals with audiobooks, and they've got a spreadsheet that if you're a member you can get access to that has a list of all the audiobook publishers in the country that have contracts with SAG-AFTRA, and even those that well, let me finish the one thought. That has all that information, who to contact, and what that person is looking for spec-wise for your demos. And most publishers that work with SAG, or have almost all the publishers have contracts with SAG, but that doesn't mean that they only use SAG narrators. Okay, it's not required for a publisher, even if they have a contract. So,
Okay.
and then other than that, there's just Google. I mean, you can Google, who's the producer at Harper, who are the producers at Harper Audio, and almost all that stuff is available on Google. LinkedIn is a great source. Most of the stuff is publicly available, and if it's not, then you snag somebody like me or somebody that someone that you have a personal relationship with, who's already a narrator, who knows your work and who's willing to introduce you to somebody. And that's another route too. But that requires more of you having a relationship, and also that they can stand by your work since they're going to be introducing you.
Right. The other great resource, if you're just getting into this, is Audiophile magazine. You can see the reviews of who all the players are, all the publishers, all the books that are being released, all the narrators, who's winning awards. So that's a great place to get the lay of the land. Like if you were coming to a new city, you're like, oh, here's what's going on in town. And then you can extrapolate from there.
And the great thing about this particular industry right now is it's still pretty small. There are not that many players. It won't take you long to figure out who all the players are, and to start targeting, the ones that you think you might have the best shot with. It's very doable.
Yeah. And can you explain what AHAB is, Ronnie?
Sure. AHAB is a database created and maintained by Penguin Random House, and it is sort of like, for those of you that have done any on-camera stuff, I don't know much about commercial voiceover. I'm sure these things exist, but it's a database where you put up a profile, where you talk about, where you list your different voice types, your different genres, specialties, any educational specialties that you may have. Let's say if you have a background in medicine, or if you have a background in the military, any language specialties that you have, any accents that you do well. It's sort of this broad spectrum, or rather it's a very broad questionnaire that you fill out, that you can put all this information in, and then you can upload, I believe, up to 10 samples on there. And it's where people at Penguin Random House, all the producers, go to find talent. So whether or not you've worked for them before, and I've worked for them before, but I still have a profile up there because because I don't know all the producers there. Most of these companies have all the larger traditional publishing houses that have audiobook divisions have 4 or 5 different producers. So I've only worked with 2 producers or 3 producers out of the 5. There's still 2 out there that don't know me, and when they go to search for stuff, I want them to be able to find me, so it's worthwhile. Also, AHAB is in the process of changing dramatically. They are about to add an interface that will allow other publishers to use the database. So it may end up becoming the central database that all the producers and publishers in the country go to search for talent. They will, I'm presuming they're going to sell it, as a membership to the producers, but it may become one-stop shopping. And so I highly recommend getting on AHAB.
Excellent. Good. Wow. That was all the answers. It's great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Excellent.
They just announced this upgrade like about a month ago, and they're hoping for it to go into effect sometime before April, I believe. So.
Great. Excellent. The inside skinny. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good. So James asks, what portion of your recording is done from home as opposed to going to a studio? Now, I'm assuming that this is talking about audiobooks, but it could also be in general.
I can only speak to audiobooks. Right now, I probably am, I would say, it fluctuates from year to year. But I would probably say about 60-40, so 60 in studio, 40 in booth, in home booth. That is that's also because I live in LA. People that live in LA and New York have a greater, probably fall greater on the side of going into a studio. And that is simply because people like Penguin Random House and other publishers that have facilities or dedicated producers in either of these cities want more control over the recording, or they want to have a director and those kinds of things. But the truth is, most of the industry is home studio based, and even people like Penguin Random House are slowly moving in the direction of adding home studio only narrators to their rosters. It's a price and budget issue, and that's the way it's going. So I think I answered that question. Yeah.
Dan, why don't we hop down to Dave's condenser versus shotgun mic for audiobooks?
Yeah, well, that's one of those do you chew gum or walk to school type of questions. There's a difference between microphones and but the difference is not something that anyone would notice. It's one of those things that it's more mic technique than it is the microphone itself. Now, a lot of people like a shotgun mic, like a Sennheiser 416, which I use, but I don't do audiobooks. Mostly long format narration and commercial work and stuff like that. It depends on where you're recording. Are you recording in a noisy place? Are you recording in an extra bedroom? Are you recording in a Studio Brooks like Ronnie is, or a whisper room, or a built booth? I'm of the opinion, and it's becoming more and more clear to me, that nobody on the other end knows what kind of a mic you're using. So who cares? As long as it's clear, properly modulated, and you use proper mic technique and the acoustics in your room are right, don't spend a fortune thinking that, oh boy, I've got a CAD E100S. This is going to make me a better voice actor. No, it doesn't work that way. What's going to make you a better voice actor is learning how to be a better voice actor. The technology is real simple, and people are totally overthinking it. So depending on what mic you have there, James, that's probably the mic or it's Dave G's question. Yeah. Whatever mic you have is probably the mic you should use, and then learn how to use it in the environment in which you are using it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And what do you find, Ronnie? What do you use at home, and what do you use at the studio?
I have an Audio-Technica, I want to say 4047.
Yeah, that's a 4047, looks like.
Yeah. And I chose it because it's the mic that's in a lot of the studios that I go to. It's a good workhorse mic, good workhorse all around mic. And as Dan will tell you, I don't know a lot of technical sound issues, so I just sort of went with what was recommended. I did experiment with a couple of other much more expensive mics. And I think as I know a lot of narrators talk about how certain mics are better suited to them because of the timbre of their particular voice, those kinds of things. I don't know a lot about that. This mic serves my purpose, so.
And they're hiring you, and they're not complaining.
Exactly.
And that's the bottom line.
It's the bottom line. Yeah.
And Dave has a follow-up. If gesticulation is needed, it won't be hard to stay in the sweet spot. Meaning,
depending on your mic.
Well, gesticulation is moving your hands, not physical movement and stuff like that. So I think what he's asking is talking about the proximity to the mic, and in which case, if you move around a whole lot, then a shotgun mic is going to definitely, throw you off. So you need a wider pattern mic. So a studio condenser mic, not that the shotgun mic is also a condenser mic, but a good studio condenser mic, like the 4047 or a TLM 103 or even a 40-40, or, you don't have to be spending $1 million on a microphone. If you spend more than $500 on a microphone, it's because you work in a professional studio that is acoustically neutral and sterile, and you can completely control all of the factors that go into the acoustics of it. So the more expensive the microphone, the more sensitive it is, the more critical the environment in which you record becomes. So just get yourself, a regular, studio condenser mic with a cardioid pattern on it, and then you can move around a little bit.
Okay, good. This is helpful, and it's great to be getting these layers of perspective, right, from the sort of internal, how's it working on the internal plane with the opening question, what's your mission statement, to practical, how does it work, to technical. All of these are all elements that everyone needs to have in the mix, obviously. Let's see. Holly asks, do you have suggestions for resources about creating a business plan for your VO business? Well, let's see. At the Dojo, we are in the process of, we have our Working Pro workout that's called the Nth Degree. The way things work at the Dojo, you should do voiceover intro intensive, leads to Mystery to Mastery, which is our 14-month full training program. It's divided into 4 belt levels. When you finish that, you're a black belt. And then as you're moving into Working Pro, and when you're Working Pro, we call that Nth Degree, like an Nth Degree black belt. So we have that as a resource where we come together in small groups and focus both on what we're doing business-wise and keeping and fighting trim together, and getting out of our freaking closet psychologically, right? So that's going on, and we're developing an Nth Degree intensive for later this spring. So that's what's going on here. What else? I know Tom Deere is a great guy to talk to. Let's see, who else would you recommend, Dan? For business plan and
business planning. Business plan. There's a great book by a guy by the name of James Horan called the One-Page Business Plan for Creatives. And if you can probably find that in the bookstore or online, it takes you through the process of what you really need to do to create a business plan. Because I think people are like, oh, I want to be a voice actor. Well, guess what? That's fine and dandy, but your job as a voice actor is running a voiceover business, and you've got to have a plan for how you're going to do that. And that's a really good book for making that type of a plan.
Okay. And are there resources through WOVO, through World Voices?
Well, we certainly have mentoring, and I know Elizabeth Holmes is really good at business planning because she was a CPA, and I think she still is a CPA. And she does a lecture about the One-Page Business Plan at our conferences, and she really understands that stuff. I don't know if she does private consulting on that, but if there's a book out there that's called The One-Page Business Plan for Creatives, that might be a really good place to start.
Yeah, and it's a great way to be thinking, Holly, because one of the other things is the internal training, the internal stuff, the practical, the technical, and then there's the entrepreneurial, which is all of this. So we're doing it all. So good. And stay close, Holly. If you have other questions, we can talk more. Mandy says, have you ever used ACX, or did your acting career allow you to immediately work with larger publishers? I remember getting started through larger publishers and being at the SAG meeting where Audible kind of rolled out, hey, we've got this great idea called ACX. And I remember from the perspective of having worked through the major publishers, I was kind of like, now what? You want us to do what all now? Because, I haven't spent as much time on their personally, what I have noticed is that it has become, that it is a really great way to kind of get started immediately. And then it's really good to understand how it fits into the scope, and, you know, and articulate what your goals are in terms of being an audiobook narrator. So that was kind of my own personal experience with it. How about you, Ronnie?
I started working for studios right away because I didn't know ACX existed. So I just didn't know about it. I really sort of fell into audiobooks. And yeah, like, you know, I had coffee with somebody who said, "Hey, what are you doing for money?" And I was like, I need some. And they were like, "Oh, have you thought about narrating?" And I was like, "Oh, all right." Long story short, it was sort of a right time, right place, right thing opportunity. But to your point, yes, I had a significant acting resume, and that made it much easier for me to get seen by this particular producer and to jump right in immediately. And so, yes, but I know many people who got their start on ACX, I know many people who make a full-time living doing mostly books through ACX, or now that they've developed relationships with writers, independent authors that they found through ACX, their entire business is independent authors. It has nothing to do with publishers. And so it's a great resource. It's a great place to start. And also too, it is easier sometimes to break in through ACX and get a few books under your belt, so that when you finally do talk to or have an introduction or the opportunity to work with or meet a producer or publisher, you're not brand new, you know. You have experience, and you have demos that you can submit that are actually from books that you've done.
Right. And
that that's the most important thing, but it you know, it does say something.
Yeah. And also just the stamina and understanding the workflow.
Absolutely.
There's just a learning curve of, like, the first time that you do anything. And audiobooks really is like, anyone can run down the street. To train to do a marathon is a little bit different process, and how you do it, how you approach it, is something that you don't necessarily want to just like.
Yeah. There's a learning curve.
Yeah.
As you
So
said.
you have to build all the things. Yeah. But I think it's opened up more opportunities than ever. And then it's really good to get wise on how your life works, and what, you know, how you're, you know, I think it's a time thing, and many things. So knowing how to optimize it. How do you optimize it? Yeah. Awesome. So hopefully that's helpful, Mandy. Oh, here's the big enchilada. Here's the big heart of the heart. Ronnie, what separates the good audiobook narrators from the great ones? Work ethic, persistence, natural talent? Yes.
Wow. And this would be solely in my opinion, right? Definitely work ethic and professionalism is a must, right? Regardless. But I think actor training, performance training as you know, as a narrator, it is, you never stop learning. And the thing that separates the average from the standout narrators are those that understand how to act and how to perform within the genre, you know, and within the world of audiobooks, right? Just like there's a certain way that you perform promo copy and commercial copy, there's a certain performance paradigm that happens in each of these markets, in each of these industries. But the best audiobook narrators are the ones that are also the best actors.
And I think also the cool thing about doing audiobooks is it's being able to deliver in terms of performance, but you also really are required to work on a bunch of different levels, because you need to have literary awareness, right? Know how to kind of know what's going on in a book. You're
Mm-hmm.
sort of the dramaturg. You're the dramaturg, you're the casting director, you're the performer, you're the director.
Yeah,
In some
I
ways,
think that.
you're the editor and technician, depending on how you're rolling on that. So it's really kind of a cool thing because you get to be all the things, and it develops your skills in all of the ways.
And I think those people that come to this work that have done those things in other disciplines, if you've been in the theater and you're used to reading plays and making choices based on understanding through line, that's a dramaturgical thing. If you've ever directed things, all those things come into play because you are all those things. Most of us direct ourselves in books, right? So you have to have the ability to stand out and understand where the arc is for each of the characters, and when the high points hit, and understanding story. So having experience in all those areas also contributes to, I think, those narrators that really stand out.
Yeah. And then I also do think there is the stamina and persistence too, because it's physically, emotionally, it's physically demanding in terms of you're not running a marathon, but you are sitting still and focused for extended periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
It's vocally demanding, talking for hours on end. It can be emotionally demanding, right? Because if you're in a book or in an experience and you're the only conduit for all the things that are happening in the book, that's
Mm-hmm.
a lot. So it does really require, it's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
And also I think the other really cool thing to remind everybody about is it's not for everybody. All the books are going to get read, babies. It's okay. If it's not for you, that's cool.
Yeah.
But if it is, it's an awesome way to.
Yeah, I like to say it's not easy work. It's work. It's incredibly fulfilling, but it's work.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. And I also think there's different narrator. Well, I'll just have a little conversation inside my own head here. So I was just thinking that different narrators have different styles too. So what
And
makes
different approaches, just like actors do.
great?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that what makes a great narrator is, do you feel it, right? Are you part of the experience? So that might be a little subjective, but it's a great thing to develop for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
When you hear a book that you can't turn off because you have to listen to what's next, then Becky, you're taking care of yourself here. Okay, good job.
I saw that. Congratulations, Becky. Thank you.
Becky found the contact spreadsheet on the SAG-AFTRA site. That's great. Let's see. James asks a quick question. Fiction, looking at the body of work on Audible, prefer nonfiction over fiction?
No, I love them both. I would say that I think it's actually easier to break into the business with nonfiction. That's how I got in. My first job was a nonfiction book, and if you can do nonfiction, there are not a lot of people that want to do it, and that are also good at it. I personally think it's an easier segment of the market to break into, and so at the beginning, most of what I did was nonfiction for the first couple of years. And now I'm a lot more diverse. Now it's easily 50-50. But yeah, so I don't have a favorite. I like them all. And I'm fortunate that I get to do a lot of different things in the work.
And I also think that that's one of the cool things. If you come from some background where you are used to thinking things through or articulating things through technically, you can just apply to this. If you give presentations, or you create create materials, or Dan is an educator, Dan knows how to break things down and explain them. So, so that you understand. If that's something that you already do and have some specialty, like in financial or scientific, I don't know if Q's on the line here,
On
but
call.
the Dojo member, he's a physicist. It's like, well, why don't we start there?
We
That
need more physicists. We really do.
Yeah.
you could start there.
Yeah.
Medical.
I was a history major in college. I didn't start studying performing arts until after I graduated, several years after I graduated from college. And so, the first book that I did was history and sociology oriented. And I've subsequently done a lot of history books. That's because I know it, and combine that with my ability to be able to talk and articulate and perform. And it was sort of an easy in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good. Let's see. Trying to see if there's any more tech questions.
Yes.
Yes. But let's keep on going here. Do you have to be a strong character actor to do audiobooks?
I would say, well, I mean, we just said that, you don't need to be a strong character actor to do nonfiction. You don't need to be a strong character actor to do memoirs. Once again, that's in the nonfiction biographies. I think if you're a strong character actor, it certainly helps when it comes to fiction, and especially commercial fiction. But I would say no, not necessarily. Because the whole world of nonfiction is about explaining things and teaching and shedding light. And if you can do that, that's a whole world right there. And I know many narrators who make their entire livings just doing nonfiction.
And I think it also goes back to that style thing too. Like as you listen, and if you're getting into this, really highly recommend listening a lot. Like listening for narrators, listening who are the publishers, listening for what kind of things are out there. But if you listen, like Scott Brick is a brilliant actor, and he has a style that kind of keeps things with little differentiation between characters, as opposed to like Jim Dale doing all of the characters in Harry Potter really completely distinctly. Like they could have their own show, right? So you can also, if being a strong character person is not your thing, then you can develop your style as long as the story is differentiated. I think so.
That's a really great point, because there are varying styles vary by actor in terms of how much transformation occurs and how much difference there is. Publishers and producers definitely want to be able to hear a difference, but it doesn't have to be huge and vast, as you're saying. It really, so there is room for different styles.
Because really, ultimately, we're storytellers in this context, not necessarily like audio plays or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, that's an interesting distinction. Let's see. Here's a demo question. So this kind of might blend the requirements of audiobook, and then also bring some tech aspect into it as well. So Emily asks, when making a demo for audiobooks, how long should it be? What should you consider when choosing the content? Any off-limit books or stories? It's a good question, and something you'll go more in depth in the intensive, right? Well, or in the You Should Do Audiobooks workshop.
Forgive me, you have to repeat that question, because I was scrolling down when you started that question. I was scrolling down looking at the other questions, and I missed what you said. I saw a question for Dan, and I was like, oh, let's make sure Dan answers his question. And then I missed what you were saying.
Excellent. So Emily's asking about demos for audiobooks. How long? What should the content? Anything that shouldn't be? Anything off limits in terms of books or stories?
Yeah. So as you were saying, this is something that we spend a lot of time on the full day workshop to go that we'll be doing Saturday, and that we do periodically. But because it's a very important thing. But I can tell you, in terms of things to stay away from, I would start with, and that is any any top-selling New York Times #1 bestseller book or hugely famous classic that's already an audio by numerous narrators. Any of, like I said, any of the top best-selling books of the last several years that have been done, like don't do anything from Michelle Obama's, autobiography, for example. And that may seem
Got it covered.
that may seem obvious, but what you don't want to do, what you want to avoid is having a producer or publisher compare you to somebody else they're extremely familiar with or already heard. Then they're just sort of comparing your performance in their head instead of listening to your performance. So if you do stuff by any narrators, any very famous narrators, or what I would call the celebrity narrators, or you do stuff that's been done by celebrities, those comparisons are going to be unavoidable in the ear and in the mind of producers and publishers. Other than that, I would say the world is your oyster. There are millions of books. What's more important is finding segments anywhere from 1 to 4 minutes, finding a segment that has a beginning, middle, and end and tells a whole story, gives a whole arc in that short amount of time, because they want to be able to hear that you're a storyteller and that you can carry them through an arc, right? And then in addition to that, something that has multiple voices so they can hear whether or not you can give those different characters and that they can distinguish them by listening. Those are the most important things. And yes, nothing more than 3 or 4 minutes. And they don't want reels. They don't want a reel, meaning they don't want a 5-minute piece that has 10 different 30-second excerpts in it. Each demo is one entity in and of itself and only comes from one story.
And then I think then you create an assemblage of demos that show sort of maybe different genres or different styles. Or
if you go to my webpage, which is ronniebutler.com/demos, DEMOS, you'll see that I have 7 or 8 different things there, and that's what you want, right? And you don't have to have, we go into this more, but you don't have to have a fancy website. It can be a SoundCloud page, it can be anything, but you need several different samples, separate samples that each are an entity in and of themselves, as opposed to one reel that has a bunch of different stuff on it.
That's cool. Excellent. Great. Let's scooch down to this tech question, which was from Paula again. Question about recording space. Any tip to help lower fan noise coming from your computer when you have it in your recording space? That's a good question.
Well, it's a good question because, it's the old doctor, it hurts when I do that. Don't do that. If you've got a noisy computer, that is not going to help you do voiceover recording or audiobook recording. It is not the way it's supposed to be done. You have to separate your computer from the mic. There's no way around it. If you're trying to cut corners and say, well, is there like a filter that will cut out that noise? Yes, but it will also destroy your voice if you don't know how to use it. This is, again, one of those pieces of mythology. Well, the technology exists for me to do anything I want, and that's not really true. The answer to these sorts of questions, at least from my perspective, is always do everything you can physically to eliminate noise or to prevent room reflection where you're recording. It's always a matter of doing what you can physically. Do not rely on technology to do this. If you've got a noisy computer that makes a lot of fan noise, it can't be near your microphone. It's just as simple as that. And it may not be the answer you're looking for, but the easiest thing to do is, if you're running a USB mic, and there's other factors involved here. If you're running a USB mic, sometimes it's not as easy to separate the mic from the computer. But if you're using a regular XLR mic, just have a longer cable and put the computer and the interface somewhere else, but not in your booth or in your recording space.
And then just like maybe have a monitor that's quiet and
monitors don't make any noise.
Like a keyboard. a Bluetooth keyboard or something like that.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So, and I guess an iPad. I mean, when I guess that's where we're reading from.
But you can also record and read from an iPad at the same time.
Yeah.
Depending on what microphone you're using or how, what type of an interface. Because a lot of interfaces today do work with iOS systems. So, meaning like an iPad or an iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
You got to realize that, an iPad is just as powerful as anything else. Oh, there's my old dog Tinky. It's just a recording device. The computer is not like this big sophisticated thing that allows you to do audiobooks. It's a cassette recorder with a hard drive on it. It's the software that's driving everything, and it's your hard drive that is actually collecting the data. So don't try to think of it as something that it's more sophisticated than that. Mm-hmm. It's usually pretty simple. So just get the mic away from your computer, or get a new computer.
Right. And we work with what we have until we make enough money to get the next thing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. You don't buy great equipment to get work. You work to get great equipment.
I love that saying of hers. Heather has kind of a blend of technical question too. Love to get started with audiobooks, but I'm concerned about editing. If you get hired to work from home, is there help for editing, or do you kind of have to figure it out on your own?
Yes and yes.
Yes and yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was like when that was one of the transitions of like when the folks from ACX said, yeah, it's really good, and you do all the work. And I was like, wait, I do all the work? Wait a minute. So I think it's not a bad idea when you're starting out. This is just like a way to approach it. To do a book, it's kind of like knowing how to do all the parts of your business. Like to know what it takes to clean the dishes and know what it takes to stock the pantry, just to know how to do all the parts of their business. To have the experience of editing could be a way to go. I think that you need to have someone, you need to either figure out or have someone get you set up in a workflow so that you know how to work that. And if that's punch and roll, and then figuring out what the process for you to do the rest afterwards. And I think ultimately, just because this is such a freaking time consuming art form, that if your business is charged with doing all the things, there's only so many hours in a day and so much you can charge. So getting someone else whose specialty is editing into your workflow, I think would be something to do fairly soon.
I think it'd be a good question to ask Ronnie. Does he do his own editing, or does he hire an outside editor and proofer?
Great question. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have an outside editor and proofer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there are many people all over the world, by the way, who do this and who do it specifically for audiobook and narration. And I just find that for me, it's more cost effective to pay somebody else to do it as opposed to me going through the learning curve of doing it. But I do know many narrators who do their own editing, proofing, and mastering. They do it all. It really depends on what you're comfortable with and your workflow and how busy you are.
Right. And just like anything, Heather, yeah, there's stuff that gets scary, but then you try it and see if it's for you, and there's always someone to help if it's not. So, and then try and know as much as you can, but don't let it deter you, right? Making sure that it's not stopping you, right? And you can try it, and if it's not for you, then that's a thing. Cool. We've got a couple more minutes here. Let's see if we can let's see if we can buzz through them. James has gotten selected for the APA speed dating for the first advice, and maybe a little intro of what that is. So APA is the Audiobook Publishers Association, and the speed dating is an event that they do. It's usually at APAC, but now you said they're doing it.
They're doing it virtually, and they're doing it in different cities, and they're also doing it virtually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like we're doing it right now. So they have a speed dating event where you log on and you talk to one person, but there are 12 people listening in that you can't see. Yeah.
Yeah. So how just to focus James, quick advice for him?
Yeah. So I've had many producers say, we want us to tell us who you are. We want us to tell us your brand and how to cast you. Don't spend the 4 or 5 minutes that you have making us try to pull teeth and pull it out of you. You want to go in. You want to go in knowing what your strengths are and what your uniqueness is. Okay. So we talked about that a little bit earlier. About when we were talking about whether or not you have a background in, say, history, or you come from a military family, or you grew up scuba diving, or you speak Italian, or you're really good with British accents because you spent a summer at Cambridge. Any of those things that are very unique about you, that have nothing to do with your experience necessarily as an actor or performer, but that make you unique and give you a what's the word I'm looking for? Separate you from other people. Those are the things that you want to mention, right? So if I give you an example, my first speed dating, I started with saying, hi, my name's Ronnie. I grew up in the Bahamas. I grew up with my father's a #1 calypso performer. I grew up singing calypso on stage in the Bahamas. I went to, all my teachers were British, so I'm really good with British accents. And of course I can do anything that's Caribbean, but I sound like an American. My mother's from upstate New York, and I sometimes impersonate Barack Obama. That was the first thing I said, because they're all casting directors. So immediately they're thinking of how your experience and how your unique experience and personality feeds into books that they have on deck, right? You saying, oh, I'm really good at nonfiction, oh, I'm really good at children's literature, doesn't help them, because they've got a bunch of people that all say that and that are all good at that. What they want to know is, what unique things do you bring to the table that they think can serve them, right? Mm-hmm. Which is frustrating, because we all think we're all character actors and we can transform, and all of us can do any work that there is, right? That's what we like to think. They don't think like that. They're thinking very specific and niche or niche market oriented, right? And secondly, don't be afraid. Once you say some very specific things about that in your experience, have a real conversation with them. This is James I'm talking to, right? It's James.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When you give them that specific information, they may say, oh, wow, James, you studied, like we said, you studied physics. Where did you study physics? And then have a conversation. You don't need to spend 4 minutes selling. What you're doing is you're creating a relationship.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing. You're creating a relationship. It's a business relationship, but the key word in that is relationship. Mm-hmm. And what you're trying to do in that 4 minutes that you have with each of those producers during speed dating, or the 10 minutes that you have with the one person, is creating a relationship, right? Because they're going to hire you based on the relationship. So you want to be as authentic as possible. Don't be afraid to be interested instead of trying to be interesting. Ask a question about them. If someone says in the speed dating, oh my gosh, I wish I would have studied physics, but I was stuck at the University of Kansas and they didn't have a physics department. And say, really? You lived in Kansas? Ask them a question about it. Engage them about themselves as well. Because that's what it is. Most of my work now comes from my relationships. Because I have relationships now, I can call people up and say, or email people and say, you know what, I'm slow right now. I just had 3 books drop off. I've got February wide open. Can you help me out? The only reason I can do that is because I actually have a relationship with that person. It's not just facts. So that's the real challenge and the real opportunity in speed dating, is being able to create a relationship in a short amount of time.
Okay.
No, I was just going to say, the way you do that is start off by giving them a lot of specifics, unique specific information about yourself that you can reel off in about 2 or 3 sentences, and let them ask you a question, and then just have a conversation with them.
Yeah. And that goes back to the business plan too. Like that's the heart of that's like everything in the business. So excellent. Well, we're
I know we're running out of time. I answered one question. I typed the answer to one question.
Okay,
while
great.
we are talking.
Dan,
is there any way that I can answer the questions that are specific to me after this is over?
I was just gonna say, what I'd love to do is just wrap things up. Let everybody know how you can stay in touch and ask other questions. When we're done here, which will just be a couple more minutes, what I'll do is I'll mute and stop the video. But Dan and Ronnie, if you have a couple seconds, and I'll do the same, if you have a couple seconds to just pop off answers. If you don't, we'll let you know how to touch base with us. That would be great. So yes, Ronnie, if you have a few minutes to keep on typing answers after we close out. So
sure. I will do that. I'm supposed to be recording something, but I'm going to answer questions first.
No, that's not.
So if you have questions about the dojo, about what we're doing here, if you're just starting out, that you should do voiceover intensive. If you are in the mix, in the process, we should talk about, how, and interested in stepping into a full training program that will let you focus and concentrate to get where you want to go. If you're working pro, we should talk. You can find time on my calendar at www.thevodojo.com and sign up for a voiceover once-over call. It's a free 15-minute call, so we can, if you have other questions, we can talk about that. Dan, how do people get in touch? Get in touch with you.
Yeah, they can go to homevoiceoverstudio.com, and that will take you to where all my stuff is. If you have some audio, have an existing studio and you'd like to have somebody listen to the audio, somebody who actually knows what it's supposed to sound like or whistle. I have a service there. It's a specimen collection cup for $25. I will analyze your audio and see if it needs any revamping or if you're right on.
Mm-hmm. And you're also available for home consultations,
absolutely,
coaching. So Dan's a great
Zoom, home visits, all sorts of things if you're in the greater Los Angeles area.
Yeah. And then Ronnie, obviously, if you're interested in having more time with Ronnie, like a full virtual day with Ronnie, the You Should Do Audiobooks workshop is coming up this Saturday. We have a few spots open. You can sign up on the website, www.thevodojo.com. And we'd love to have you there. This is audiobooks. You Should Do Audiobooks 1.
Yeah, it's level 1. Soup to nuts.
So
it's great, but it's an intense day, and you'll get a lot from it.
Yes, it's really, really good. It's really well thought out, and really, if you have been thinking about this or have started and are kind of like, what?
Mm-hmm.
So boom. So that's
yeah.
Fantastic.
And we talk about demos, about marketing, about performance technique, about follow up with publishers and producers. It's everything, all sides of the industry, all sides of it.
Yeah. So check that out. You Should Do voiceover intensives are coming up at the end of the month. We do one live here in Los Angeles, February 28th, 29th, and March 1st. And then we also have the 6-week virtual version coming up at the beginning of March. So those are up on the website too. And then come join us, put this on your calendar, the first Wednesday of every month. We do this Ask the Sensei call, free, where you can get your questions answered. And
I just want to say people can find me. They can find me. I'm on Facebook, Ronnie Butler Jr. for Junior, Ronnie Butler Jr. On Twitter at Ronnie Butler Jr. I'm sorry, on Twitter it's just Ronnie Butler. I know it's confusing. And on Instagram it's Ronnie Butler Jr. for Junior. You can find me at my you can go to the website and send me an email from the website. But I'm on social media, and just reach out to me. Seriously, happy to help.
Well, thank you all for being here, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month. Dan, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Tish.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, everybody, for chiming in today. It's really great.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you, and we'll see you next month.